On Earth, panic had spread through the streets as alien ships filled the sky. Military units were scrambled, but even the most advanced human technology paled in comparison to the Cyclons. Resistance seemed futile. But in a small town in Nebraska, a man named Jonas gathered his family and led them to an underground bunker. Jonas wasn't a soldier, but he was a man with unwavering love for his family. His wife, Elsa, and their young son, Rook, huddled together as distant explosions shook the ground above them. Jonas clutched a rifle, his hands shaking not from fear but from the weight of responsibility. "Dad, what's happening?" Rook asked, his voice trembling. Jonas knelt down, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. "They're coming, buddy, but I'm going to keep you safe. I promise." A loud crash echoed from above as Cyclone drones smashed through the bunker's entrance. Jonas knew there was no running now. In the Cyclone command ship, Exos watched the human resistance with mild curiosity. These creatures should have surrendered by now, yet they fought with a ferocity he had not predicted. His eyes narrowed as his sensors focused on a single individual, Jonas. The man had somehow taken down 2 Cyclone drones, a feat considered impossible for a primitive being. Exos leaned forward, intrigued. "What drives them?" he murmured. "What makes them fight, knowing the odds are against them?" Thran, emotionless as ever, responded, "They are irrational. They do not value logic." Exos stared at Jonas's image. There was something there. Something he had never encountered before. "Perhaps," Exos said, "we've miscalculated." Jonas knew he couldn't hold out forever. More drones would come. His rifle was almost out of ammunition, and he had no more time to waste. Turning to Elsa, he kissed her forehead. "Take Rook and run to the emergency exit. I'll hold them off." Elsa's eyes filled with tears. "Jonas, no. You can't." "I have to," he said, his voice firm. "I love you both too much to let anything happen to you." With a final embrace, Jonas turned back toward the incoming drones, raising his rifle. He felt no fear, only love. His purpose was clear. He would give everything to protect his family. Jonas wiped the sweat from his brow, adrenaline pumping through his veins. The sharp sound of metal grinding on metal echoed down the hall as the Cyclone drones forced their way through the reinforced bunker door. His rifle felt heavy in his hands, and his breath came in short bursts, but he refused to falter. He glanced back at Elsa and Rook, their terrified faces illuminated by the flickering lights. Elsa clutched their son tightly, her eyes pleading for him to come with them, but Jonas knew better. If he didn't hold the line, they wouldn't make it. His voice was calm despite the fear gripping his heart. "Go! Now!" Elsa hesitated, but Jonas's stern look left no room for argument. She grabbed Rook's hand and ran toward the emergency escape tunnel, her sobs echoing in the cold, damp bunker. The door buckled and screeched as the first Cyclone drone burst through. Its sleek, silver body moved with mechanical precision, its red eyes scanning the room for targets. Jonas aimed and fired, the recoil of the rifle kicking back into his shoulder. The bullet struck the drone's chest, causing sparks to fly as it staggered backward, but it wasn't enough to stop it. 2 more drones followed, their thin, insect-like limbs clicking against the steel floor as they advanced. Jonas fired again, emptying the clip into the closest one. The drone fell, its head sparking and twitching, but the others pressed forward relentlessly. Jonas cursed under his breath. He was running out of time. He quickly reloaded, his hands shaking, knowing this would be his last stand. In the Cyclone command vessel, Exos watched the feed with a detached curiosity. His analytical mind couldn't comprehend why this human continued to fight. The battle was lost. Jonas had no chance of survival, and yet he fought on. What drives him? Exos murmured, more to himself than to Thran, who stood beside him. Thran's voice was cold and mechanical. He is irrational. Humans cling to emotions, to attachments. It blinds them to the reality of their situation. Exos remained silent, but his gaze never left the screen. This human, Jonas, was no soldier, yet he fought with more determination than any warrior Exos had seen. There was something compelling about his defiance. "Order the drones to stand down for now," Exos commanded. He wanted to observe more, to understand. Jonas fired his last shot, the sound echoing through the bunker as the final round tore through a drone's torso. It collapsed, sparks flying as its limbs twitched in its death throes. But it wasn't enough. More drones were coming, their glowing red eyes piercing the darkness as they emerged through the door. He was out of ammo. The first drone lunged at Jonas with terrifying speed. Jonas ducked, grabbing a metal pipe from the ground and swinging it with all his strength. The pipe connected with the drone's head, sending it crashing into the wall. But before he could strike again, another drone struck him across the chest, its clawed arm slashing through his shirt and leaving a deep gash in his flesh. Jonas stumbled back, blood soaking through his clothes, but he didn't stop. His heart pounded in his chest as he swung the pipe again, knocking the drone to the ground. But for every drone he took down, 2 more seemed to take its place. His vision blurred as pain and exhaustion began to overtake him. Jonas could barely stand, but his mind remained sharp. He knew this was the end, but if it bought his family just a few more moments, it was worth it. The control room of the Cycron ship remained eerily silent as Exos watched the humans' last moments unfold. Jonas was surrounded, the drones closing in on him, yet he refused to fall. His will was unbroken. For the first time in his life, Exos felt something stir within him. It wasn't admiration or sympathy. Those were foreign concepts to a Cycron, but something close to curiosity. Jonas was clearly aware of his impending death, and yet he chose to continue fighting. "This is not logical," Exos muttered. "Why does he not surrender? It would be efficient." Thran glanced at Exos. He is human. Their actions are often dictated by irrational emotions. Exos's eyes narrowed. Perhaps. But there is strength in this irrationality. Strength we do not yet fully understand. Jonas fell to his knees, his breathing ragged, blood pouring from his wounds. The drones circled him like vultures, their mechanical claws clicking ominously. One of them raised its arm to deliver the final blow. But in that moment, Jonas thought only of his family. He saw Elsa's tear-streaked face, the way she had looked at him one last time before fleeing with their son. He pictured Rook's innocent eyes, filled with both fear and hope. That was what drove him, his love for them. That love was stronger than any fear, stronger than any pain. He gritted his teeth and, with a primal scream, threw himself at the nearest drone. It was a futile gesture, but it was all he had left. He slammed into the machine with all his remaining strength, knocking it off balance. The other drones converged on him, and within seconds he was overwhelmed. His body hit the ground with a heavy thud. The drones stood over him, but Jonas didn't care. His mind was already elsewhere, thinking of Elsa, Rook, and the life they would have because of his sacrifice. He had done what he had to do. As his vision darkened, Jonas's final thought was simple. They're safe. On the Cycron flagship, Exos watched the scene unfold, his face expressionless. But inside, something had shifted. He had witnessed a power he had never understood before, a power that defied logic and reason. Jonas's sacrifice was meaningless by Cycron standards. And yet, it had changed everything. Exos turned to Thran. Withdraw the drones. Let them have their victory, for now. Thran's mechanical eyes blinked in confusion. But, Commander, I said withdraw, Exos repeated, his voice hard. This is not over. But we will return when we understand them better. As the Cycron fleet retreated, Exos stared at the fading image of Earth. For the first time in his long, emotionless life, he felt a glimmer of something he couldn't explain. These humans, he thought, are more dangerous than we realized. Elsa emerged from the bunker, holding Rook's hand tightly as they gazed at the sky. The alien ships were retreating, pulling back into the blackness of space. She felt no relief, only an aching emptiness where Jonas should have been. But Rook stood tall, his eyes reflecting the same fire that had burned in his father's. "He did it, Mom," he whispered. "He saved us." Elsa knelt down, hugging her son tightly. "Yes, he did." And in that moment, the galaxy shifted, not because of technology or power, but because one man had chosen love over fear, a lesson the Cycrons, and the rest of the universe, would never forget. The Cycrons could not comprehend what had transpired. To Exos, Jonas's sacrifice was an anomaly, a deviation in the equation of life and death. But the humans rallied behind the fallen, united by a shared pain and love for their own. Across the world, acts of selflessness inspired others to fight with newfound strength. For the first time in their history, the Cycrons were at a loss. They had no defense against this new weapon, emotion. Exos stood before the Cycron High Council, reporting his findings. "The humans are unlike any species we've encountered. They possess an unquantifiable force, an emotional connection that drives them to sacrifice, to resist even when logic dictates they should surrender. It is formidable." The council members, silent and impassive, exchanged glances. "You are suggesting," the High Commander began, "that their weakness is actually their strength?" Exos hesitated, but then nodded. "Yes. They fight not for survival alone, but for each other. This emotion they feel, it defies all calculation." Jonas's name became a rallying cry for those who had lost hope. His love for his family, his willingness to sacrifice everything, had shown the galaxy something new. That emotion was the most powerful force in the universe. The Cycrons withdrew from Earth, not because they were defeated by superior technology or strategy, but because they could not combat the raw strength of the human heart. In the end, it wasn't logic or strategy that won the day. It was love. Rook, now older and a leader in the human resistance, stood before a monument dedicated to his father. He placed a hand on the cold stone, his heart full of pride. "We may be small," Rook whispered, "but we are strong, stronger than they could ever understand." I hope you had a good time. If you liked my story, do not forget to comment and subscribe to my channel. Goodbye. See you in the next story.